Hello everyone. This is my not or this video for this week. And what I mean by that is that I wanted to post this particular video instead of doing an or this video for this week. And it's more of a general message, invitation to everybody as opposed to my usual video of the Monday morning quarterbacking of the previous week's gospel and sermon. But I wanted to talk to you all about something that Bishop Laura Barbans from our Northeastern Ohio Synod said this past weekend as we had our Synod Assembly. In her portion of her report on the Synod, she talked a little bit about this time that we are currently experiencing, this time that we're in, kind of post-pandemic, but not exactly post-pandemic, because there's still people getting COVID and there's still the projection of cases going up again and all these kinds of things. And so we're not exactly sure where we're at, but we're not exactly in the same place as we were in 2020 and 2021, but we're not completely out of the woods yet either. And how we as churches are trying to figure out what it is that we're doing. And I know a lot of us have started to try to do things a little bit more normal than we used to, without using masks and getting back to doing worship a little bit more the structure that we are used to, being able to sing and all that kind of thing. Bishop Barbans, though, talked about a lot of the ways in which we are thinking of the time going that we are planning for, and thinking of how can we get back to the way things were when they seemed more normal, and using the idea of going back. And that's a difficult thing to think about because a lot of times going back, you can't go back in many cases. When we go through things in life, you can't go back to the way things were before those things happened because it's just not possible. And she encouraged us to think too about when we consider planning what we're doing in ministry, that we can't look at it as going back. We can't go back to doing things and being the same people, the same church as we were before COVID, because so much has changed since that time. And she used two examples of two different scripture stories. One was the story of the people of Israel when God brought them forth from slavery in Egypt, that although when they were in the wilderness being led by Moses, whom God raised up to bring them out of slavery in Egypt, there was a lot of complaining because of things in the wilderness obviously being so different and difficult and unfamiliar, and there was a lot of whining about wanting to go back to Egypt. At least they had three meals a day, at least they knew what to expect. And this talk about going back, when we think about it that way, that seems almost a crazy thing for them to do, to want to go back to Egypt. Now, we may not be in exactly that kind of situation. Of course, many of us liked our lives the way they were in 2019. It's not that we're necessarily looking at going back to slavery, but the idea of going backwards in life just is something that you can't do. We are just not able to do. But what happens for the people of Israel when they are going to have to go forward into something unfamiliar, which will lead them to the promised land that God had in store for them? What happened during this difficult journey was that God said, I will go ahead of you. God led them by a pillar of cloud and fire. God went ahead of them. And so it was never like they were going and like, where's God? But God is always the one ahead. God knows what's ahead. God's there already. And so God is the one that guides God's people into the promised land. In a similar kind of way, Jesus' disciples, Bishop Barbans said, they didn't know what life after Jesus' death and resurrection was going to be like. They had no clue what to expect, but they weren't going to be able to go back to the way things were. And so what happened when Jesus appears to the followers at the tomb, or when the angels speak to the women at the tomb and say Jesus is not here, they say, go and tell the disciples that Jesus has gone ahead of you, and Jesus will meet you in this particular place. And the idea then is that Jesus has gone ahead of you means that Jesus is in this unfamiliar, very different situation. Jesus goes ahead and is already knows what life is like, and calls his followers to join him where he is at in this new life that he has brought about. And Bishop Barbans' message to all of us is to remember that in these and many other examples, when there is no real option to go back, but only to go forward, God is always ahead of us. God is always in front of us, leading us forward and to be there with us. And so forward isn't a place that we need to be afraid of, because God is there already, already calling us to be with God, where God is at, going forward. And the invitation part for you comes in with this May 22nd event that is coming up this coming Sunday. And this is an opportunity for us to work on going forward together. We've been talking the past couple weeks now in sermons, and the weeks before that you've been reflecting in journals about these promises that we make in baptism, which we've had we've had these promises for a long time, and maybe we just weren't aware of them. But can we look at these promises that are important aspects of our life of faith, and how can we use these to lead us forward to where God is leading us, to where God is calling us, to where this resurrection life in the midst of whatever point of the pandemic we're in is going to take us. But we do this together. So we are doing this in conversation this coming Sunday as we gather around some food and have some conversations about what these promises have meant to us, and how can we use these promises to guide and structure the way we are as church together going into the future. And maybe something will come out of these. In fact, I'm hoping that something will come out of this conversation that we have together to help us as we go forward, and be something we can be excited about together going forward. When going forward might sometimes mean change, and that can sometimes be scary. But is there something that we can all come up with together and get excited about together and work on together? But you are a very important part of that equation. So I hope that you are able to join us on Sunday. And we had sign-up sheets at church, and they've been there the past couple of weeks. But if you haven't been in person in church and you would like to sign up, please feel free to just say you would like to attend by saying so in the comments on Facebook, or send an email to the church and say, hey, I plan to attend on May 22nd for this conversation. I did call the event What's Next, living our baptism into the future. So how can we do that together? So please join us for that. And if it's something you wish you really could be at and you just can't, let us know that too. Let me know that, and maybe we can get another conversation group together after Sunday to be part of the conversation. So thank you for watching, and I hope you can join us as we journey forward together into the future with God already there ahead of us. Thanks, and God bless.